and that's what the goal is here with X/Twitter, is maximum truth seeking. Unless someone's doing something like just flat out illegal, then they should be allowed to say what they. Free speech is only relevant if we allow people that you don't like to say things you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you don't let people you don't like say things that they don't like, and you censor them, it's only a matter of time before that censorship is turned upon you.
Yeah. Something I've noticed traveling all around the world, and especially, I mean, recently I've been to all over the US. The average person is terrified to speak their mind. It's something that is supposed to be a bedrock of our societies and nations and cultures. We're afraid of the freedom of speech aspect. So how did we get there?
So that's why I'm, encouraging people like let's at least like maintain our numbers. Like we don't need to expand in a crazy way, but it's at least maintain our numbers, maybe a little bit of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So
why do you think so many people think the opposite? I mean, you hear a lot of talk about I think the whole overpopulation thing
is total rubbish.
I think it's a massive psyop. And
that's not true.
But why do so many otherwise smart people buy into that?
Well, I think to some degree this is a side effect of the environmental movement.
Okay.
So the sort of environmental movement, I think, started off well, where it was saying, look, we need to move to sustainable energy, which is correct in the long term. We do need to move to sustainable energy. It's tautological. I mean, for a long time, like books were very rare, and like people would have a small collection of books. Before the Gutenberg press, they'd have to literally copy out the book by hand. So we should be actually quite excited about the fact that there is this massive leveling of opportunity of access to information, because those that did have books in the old days would be, be like the lord of some, manor or something would have their library, but even that would be a pretty small library.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have access to vastly more information than, the King of England did.
Yes.
Like even 100 years ago,
mm-hmm.
like even say 40 years ago. Like the average person right now has access to more information than the most powerful person on earth did in say 1980 or even 1990, frankly. How are people say in a democracy supposed to make the right decision if they don't have the right information?
Mm-hmm.
If they're being misled or important information is being withheld, which obviously was the case, in the infamous 100-byte laptop situation. Everyone knows about that. But there are thousands of other smaller situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
So effectively, Twitter and frankly Google and YouTube and whatnot, Facebook. They put their thumb on the scale of elections worldwide, and they have done for some time. So, and a lot of times it's so subtle you don't even really notice it. And somewhat of a depressing civilizational collapse. If the birth rate keeps dropping every year and population just keeps going into this sort of like negative death spiral, literally, then it won't die with a bang.
I can't afford it. I can't even buy a house. I'm in debt. I'm struggling to keep my head above water. Sure. I think it's one thing to recognize the issue, but what do you think can be done on a sort of practical, reasonable level?
I mean, I say that, but then ironically, the higher someone's income,
fewer kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that for a lot of young people, and some of this is media and cultural programming, but a lot of people have been pushed over the decades the idea that having children ruins your life, right?
If they manage to get all the way here from another star system, I mean, their technology is going to be far in excess. I mean, we'll be primitive compared to them, So, but I also think like if there aren't aliens, or that's actually perhaps even a bigger concern, because if there actually aren't aliens in our galaxy or anywhere near us, then effectively this consciousness on planet Earth is the light of consciousness, and we should just do everything we can to make sure it does not go out. Well, I think digital superintelligence is. I think that digital superintelligence, or artificial general intelligence, as it's called sometimes or mostly, is more likely to be good than bad. It'll be about restoring functionality to people who've lost their connection between their brain and their body. But that's our first application, is to restore functionality to quadriplegics, tetraplegics, and people who've just, for whatever reason, no longer have a connection between, or a limited connection between their brain and their body. And then the second application would be restoration of eyesight. So if somebody's gone completely blind, maybe even has lost the optic nerve, you can actually still directly stimulate the neurons in the visual part of the cortex. So you can give direct vision to the brain.
Where does it go? What are the ethical boundaries of it?
Well, I mean, the thing I wanted to emphasize is that it's not going to sort of pounce on us overnight. What's one of the worst punishments in prison is solitary confinement. And it's not like, if you're not in solitary confinement, the rest of the prisoners maybe not like the most awesome group to hang out with, but it's way better than being alone.
Yeah, you're probably safer in there, but
yeah,
you don't want to be there.
So humans love other humans more than they realize.
Yeah.
But now you have access to vastly more information than, the King of England did.
Yes.
Even 100 years ago, even say 40 years ago, actually violence on average is much lower than it used to be.
Oh yeah.
War is rare. I mean, we have war in Ukraine, but it used to be like there was war everywhere,
Even just look at the past century.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Last century was insane.
Yeah.
It's now rare for there to be war.
Yeah. I think people lack perspective and gratitude with all those things that you're saying. And I think that if people had more awareness of both history and how far and how quickly human beings have advanced and how much things have gotten better, even if you just take something obvious things, poverty, childhood mortality, women dying in childbirth, access to education,
that's a huge issue. I mean, it used to be
literacy. I think it's one thing to recognize the issue, but what do you think can be done on a sort of practical, reasonable level?
Well, I do think that some of the incentive structure in a lot of countries is against having kids.
Yes.
It is expensive to have kids, especially if you want to sort of give them the best education and all that sort of stuff. So it's it is financially difficult. But I say that, but then ironically, the higher someone's income,
fewer kids.
I think that actually the most likely outcome for artificial intelligence is that it is good, that it will improve our lives, most likely. But there's some chance that it will not, and I think we just need to be cognizant of that and understand that it's a powerful technology. It's a double-edged sword, and we need to put a lot of effort into ensuring that we have a good AI outcome and not a bad one. Effectively, AI, I think it will massively enhance human ability. It's like just a massive amplifier of human ability, just like the computer was. There's some risk it may view humanity negatively and decide that we're a blight on the earth. Now, I think that could change over time. I'm hopeful it will.
We've got, number one, I think people often forget that these platforms are global.
They're global, yeah.
They're not just in the USA. 100 plus different countries, different jurisdictions with different laws, different rules. But then also the goal of the platforms is to keep people on them. In most cases is to sell advertising, is to make them sticky and addictive and keep people coming back. But
there is actually quite a lot of pressure from advertisers. And, I think if we simply towed the line and kept going as it was before, then we would still have a lot of that revenue. So that like actually freedom of speech was pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Well, I think to some degree this is a side effect of the environmental movement.
Okay.
So the sort of environmental movement, I think, started off well, where it was saying, look, we need to move to sustainable energy, which is correct in the long term. We do need to move to sustainable energy. It's tautological. If we don't move to sustainable energy, then it's unsustainable and we'll run out and civilization will grind to a halt. So we do need to have sustainable energy over time. There's obviously a concern with climate change. Although, I'm of the opinion that while there is a long-term concern for climate change, there is not really much of a short-term concern. Like it's a very slow process, and I think we don't need to sort of be stopping people from farming or having cows or whatever.
What do you think is the greatest threat to humanity?
Well, I think digital superintelligence is a real concern.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that digital superintelligence, or artificial general intelligence, as it's called sometimes or mostly, is more likely to be good than bad. But it's just that the probability of a bad outcome is not zero. And I think probably the more we worry about a bad outcome, the less likely it is to occur.
Okay.
So I think we should be, just say, like, let's try to steer the AI in a good direction.
What do you think that potentially bad outcome would be?
It's a long time to be traveling through deep space. So the video games back then were extremely primitive, I guess when I was about, 10 or so, I saw like the first computer. I thought, wow, this is the best thing ever. It was a Commodore VIC-20. So I got a book on programming, taught myself how to write computer programs, and then gradually progressed from the Commodore VIC-20 to the Sinclair Spectrum, which was actually a pretty brilliant little computer. It felt very advanced after the VIC-20. And you couldn't really get very many games. So I was like, well, I'll program games, play them myself. Yeah. So really mostly sad and unhappy childhood, actually. That wasn't 100% bad, but it was pretty rough. And I lived in South Africa until I was 17. Childhood experience, like literally scars. Well, there's certainly plenty of good things about the country, but my particular experience was not that great. So I'd try to take the set of actions that I think are most likely to result in a good future, be as useful as possible. So that's what I was going to be doing my graduate studies at Stanford on. Is sort of advanced energy storage technology for electric vehicles, and are putting that on hold to start an internet company.
What was your first impression of the internet? Because I think for young people now, it's like it feels like the internet's always been there.
Yeah.
I remember when people were terrified to put their credit card details online, when people thought selling books online was a dumb idea and this Amazon thing was never going to work. Stuff has changed very, very quickly. But what was your first impression of the internet, and how did you so quickly realize its potential?
And you started to have the internet go beyond just universities and like a handful of universities and government institutions to be kind of commercialized, and it was just growing exponentially. So the way I sort of visualized it was like the humanity was like acquiring a nervous system, and if you wanted to have access to a book, you'd have to go to a library, and the book. Most of the libraries would only have a very small subset of the books that exist. So your access to information was very limited, and very slow. But as soon as you have the internet, where everyone's connected, now you could be in a very remote location.
So, firstly, can you explain what Neuralink is and what the goal of it is?
We put a chip in your brain to control your mind. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Concerns not alleviated.
Yeah, there you go. Jump right in. Step right up. Who wants one? No, so Neuralink, you'll be able to see Neuralink coming from a very long distance, because any device that you implant in a human you have to go through so many tests. It moves very slowly. You just do a few people at a time, and then you go to extreme lengths to prove safety. You have to go through the FDA approvals. Like, we're not trying to sidestep any regulatory approvals. We're doing everything by the book and with maximum.
Something that strikes me with that agenda as well, and people who push it, is it also seems like Western countries climbing the ladder and then pulling the ladder up after them.
It's no comparison. I mean, for a long time, like, books were very rare, and like, people would have a small collection of books. Before the Gutenberg press, they'd have to literally copy out the book by hand. So having a book was like a relic.
Yes.
It was like, hardly anyone had books, hardly anyone could read, and even those that had books didn't have very many of them. Mm-hmm. Then you had the Gutenberg press thing, and now you can make copies of books, but still paper, still limited, still not that many. I think being a spacefaring civilization is something that I think a lot of people would find very exciting and inspiring, and even if they don't go themselves, they can just kind of live vicariously through those that went. I mean, I think with the Apollo landings, it was they were literally said for all mankind, and I think everyone was proud to be a human at that point.